we sometimes delay releases if we want a certain fix or a certain feature in, but it doesn't seem like there's anything that might be delaying it for this release. So for our first feature, we finally have support for multi-line string interpolation. This requires enabling the experimental feature flag multi-line string interpolation. This is something that people have been asking for a while, and we're finally hearing you out and implementing this. It is experimental, and it will be for a little bit until we could figure out the exact experience that we want to give the users, but it is out. So there's an example on the sides, the base example, and for multiple $ characters. So the way you're able to use this is with an optional $ prefix to the current multi-line opening syntax of 3 single quotes, which enables interpolation using the standard syntax for string interpolation. You can specify the number of $ required for interpolation by repeating that prefix. You can look at the samples here, but we will demo this next community call, so don't worry about if you need a demo, we will have it on next community call. We just have a lot of really fun demos today. If you do have any questions about this feature, please put them in chat. Anthony was the one who worked on this, and I believe he is in the chat and can answer any questions that you have. The next one is a bug that several users reported about extendable param files. They happen to be breaking when using imports in nested Bicep param files. We've been able to hopefully fix that bug by adding support for extended imports. This also should be out by 0.39. There were a couple of hot fixes that we had to release because of 0.38 having a couple of breaks. So yeah, the other small bug fixes that came from the 0.38 release. Thank you everyone for creating those issues. For each bug that comes up, we really do try our best to roll out fixes as fast as possible. If they're breaking your deployments, we really don't want that to happen for you guys. For our third one of our contributors, Jees, I really hope I am pronouncing your name correctly. He saw that the Bicep RPC client library didn't have any documentation in our GitHub repo and decided to put together an entire page on what it is and how to use it. So thank you so much for doing this. We put docs not needed on some issues because this is mainly for the Microsoft specific docs, and we don't always have docs available for the GitHub repo. So it's always super helpful and really appreciated when external contributors want to contribute docs or anything like that. So thank you. And we can go into our first topic. Tate.
Thank you. Yeah, so something that we've recently added as an experimental feature is the Bicep Console command. Using this command will start a REPL session or read eval print loop. And you can use this to test out expression evaluations, functions, variables, just to see how they'll behave in Bicep before actually having to deploy. So it'll be a useful tool just to experiment with the different language features and capabilities and provide a rapid prototyping and debugging environment. So I'll share my screen and do a brief demo. So to start the REPL environment, you just type in Bicep Console. And so that should launch this environment with an experimental warning, experimental feature warning. But here you can type in different functions like concat. And you'll see what the output would be if this was executed in Bicep. So other functions like split also work. You can try this out with any function that is not doesn't need to be run at runtime. So you try this out, and we also added the ability to store variables. So you can type in like rg equals resource group, and then that will be stored in this REPL session. So you can use that in function calls to see how that would behave. Oh, wrong. To see how that would behave. And so if you don't have the variable saved, you'll get this diagnostic showing where the compilation went wrong. But if it is saved, you'll get the output of what these functions would create. So this showed what the diagnostics look like. So if you ever have something that's incomplete, it'll show where the diagnostic occurred and have this diagnostic highlighting. We've also added multi-line support. So if you have an object and you just type enter, you can complete your object, and then once it recognizes that the object is complete, it'll store that as your object. So you can try out more complicated situations. So for example, here from just the Bicep Lambdas page, I have this dogs object. So we can save this variable and then try that out with a function that uses lambdas like toObject and see what would happen if we passed in this array and set the entry to name and then the values to properties. And so it'll show you what that output would be. So these are some of the features that are available today. And something that we have coming are in the next release should be user-defined types and user-defined functions. So for example, here I have this type person type, which has a name and an age. And then I have a user-defined function, say hi, which takes this person type and then will output hello, name, and you are this year old. So if we type in a variable that matches this person type, we can try say hi for that variable, and you should see the output. I think that should be it for the demo. If you try this out and have any suggestions, feel free to add those or add any additional features you'd like to the GitHub issue. Thanks.
Thanks, Tate. Seems like we have a lot of excitement on this in the chat, so really happy to have this out for you guys. Please let us know if you have any feedback, try it out. Let us know if there's anything we can improve or how much you like it. All right, we'll move on to our next topic. We're going to be talking a little bit about the local deploy extensions. So Anthony will give a really quick local deploy recap.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so just to kind of recap with local deploy, I won't take too much of your time. With Bicep, we obviously started off being Azure focused. And over time, we've ended up creating some extensions like the MS Graph extension, which runs in Azure. The name for local deploy, I think, has been pretty confusing. And so I think we're looking to change this. But essentially, what local deploy does is it runs that same deployment engine locally inside your Bicep CLI. Where people are getting confused, I think, is that you can run this on your local system and you can interact with your local system, but it is not purely for interacting with your local system. So the idea is that people can build extensions for this. This extension contract is very similar to the extension contract we use in the cloud for like the MS Graph extension. But you can build your own extension. You can publish it and you can share it with other people. You can consume it, and you can use those extensions to model anything as a resource. So you can model something on your local system if you want to. You can model, like we have an example of like a GitHub extension, an Azure DevOps extension. You can really just kind of wrap anything if you can model it declaratively, if it has an idempotent contract, or if you can write an idempotent wrapper for it. You can build it. You can build it into an extension. You can share it with people, and then you can use it in Bicep. So I think probably more will be clear when we switch over to John and his demo.
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Like 2 community calls ago, Gijs Rijn showed the Databricks local deploy, Azure Databricks local deploy. So I was inspired to create the Azure DevOps one. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I correct one. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah, it does. Okay, great. So I have created the.
Zoom in a little bit more.
Yeah, I will do that.
Thanks.
Is this good enough? Readable?
It's good to me.
All right. So I've created the Azure DevOps Bicep local deploy extension that basically allows us to define objects of Azure DevOps in Bicep to be able to deploy them. So you can have a DevOps output. For example, I have some features. Let's take a look at those. So the current capabilities I implemented and the community, I also got some community pull requests from Gijs, for example, is to create that you can create Azure DevOps projects, repos, artifact feeds. You can create federated service connections. So you can actually get output from Entra and create a service connection, assign Entra ID groups, and install Azure DevOps Marketplace extensions. So that are the current capabilities that I implemented right at this moment. And it's basically wrapping Bicep around some API calls, using your own identity. That can be your personal access token or an Entra token. And I advise to use Entra token because it's more secure. What's important is to know is that you have to configure the Bicep config. I will go to the questions later, okay? Is that fine, Blaine? All right. So there are some. So what you have right now is with Microsoft Graph, is you also have to define the extension, and that's basically the same for Bicep local deploy. So I've created the Azure DevOps container registry, where I publish the binary for the Azure DevOps functionality. But you can also do it if you clone the repo. I will share it later on in the chat. If you clone the repo, you can also build it, and you can define the binary in your Bicep config to point it to a local file. So you don't have to use the registry, but you can do that. If you have done that, then you can create your Bicep file. So I've created the Bicep file community call.bicep here. And I've added the target scope local because that's the one for to target to the local scope. And the important one is the extension definition. So you have to define the extension here, Azure DevOps, and that needs to match the key from the extension in the Bicep config. So after you have done that, you can actually make use of, let's turn off Copilot for a second, if I can find it. Whatever, we will do Copilot. So resource, you define the resources like you are used to with resources or modules. So I call this project, and you actually get the list of resources that are available in the binary. As a dropdown. So you can select the project here. There's no API version for me at this point. And there is also a pop-up for the properties. So in this case, I do project name and organization. And if we deploy this Bicep file, it will actually deploy a Azure DevOps project inside your organization. I won't deploy this one, but because we are going to look to a more extensive one, I prepped a sample in my main.bicep, same configuration, target scope local, with the extension, and all the parameters that are required. And here I have a list of a project that I'm going to create. I'm going to install extensions. Also here is a repository, and it's coupled with the project resource info. So there's a dependency. Also for artifact feed, reader permissions for my Entra group, and a creation of the service connection. And also there's outputs, of course. So each resource also contains outputs. So if you take a look here, it's a Windows shortcut, but I'm on a Mac. So also here you can use yeah, you can use the pop-up to select the outputs of a certain resource. It's also great. You can also use user-defined types, of course. So it's not really that different with Bicep resource definitions or the Azure version. The only difference is that you have to define your target scope and your extension, and you need to know which resources are available. And if I take a look here at the parameter file, so it's the same thing you do using Bicep. Put your organization here and all your information regarding the repository name, the artifact name, and which extensions you want to install. And I have some secret stuff here with IDs that I don't want to publish. So if we go to the console and we are going to run the command to actually deploy, so you can run bicep local deploy main.bicep param. That deploys the actual main bicep. So if it's enter, let's pray to the demo gods it works. You get this fancy table. So you see here the extension is created first. It can take some seconds for the project. Reader permission, artifact feeds. And at last you get an output of all the outputs that are defined here in the main.bicep. So I didn't want to expose this one. This is nice. So this is the output. And then we go to the browser. Let's see. Browser projects. Refresh it. Zoom in. Then we see the actual Bicep community called demo project that we created. So if we go in there for a quick walkthrough, you see the repos created. Bicep community called demo repo. Also the artifact feed is created. Bicep community called demo feed. And the service connection is also created. So yeah, if you are interested in creating your own extension, I wrote a blog post about it, this subject, explaining a step-by-step process on how, what you need to do to get a working extension. So if you're interested, I will link it in the chat, so you can create your own extension. So that was my my demo. Any questions from the chat? We
Looks
got
like there's
Blaine first,
one
right?
hand up.
Nitin?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand. My bad.
So I will link it in the chat. And if there are any questions, yeah, please reach out. Oh, sorry, James. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious about how it ties into the default Azure credential. I'm guessing the bicep config, how you say like pull from like PowerShell, then AZ CLI, then your Microsoft token, like you have those different things. I'm guessing this ties into that credential flow as well, naturally, not to
Yes.
create your own. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay.
Yeah, so I've created it myself, Anthony. I don't know if it's something that is built in the future, but I make use of the Entra tokens or the personal access tokens to connect to the DevOps environment. You can choose. So yeah, if I'm going to link it in the chat and then I give the presentation back to Dan.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. Yeah, over to you, Dan.
Find my window. No. Does this look good? I've zoomed in.
Looks
Yep.
great.
So I don't want to go over too many of the things John's already gone through, but I wanted to create something outside of the typical Microsoft ecosystem. I use Cloudflare a lot myself personally. I know a lot of other people do as well because it's a really good product. And so I wanted to see if I could do a Bicep local deploy extension for Cloudflare. So at the minute, that's what I've created. Its current capabilities is mostly just common DNS records. So we've got text, MX, CNAME. There's a few others as well that it supports at the moment. It's quite new, so it's not as fancy in terms of, I'd love to keep improving it. I think the next thing I'm looking at, and the community can get involved in as well, is maybe enhancing the capability so that we can deploy WAF rules as well, which I think would be really cool. But similarly to what John's described in your Bicep config, you can specify the ACR URI, or if you're developing locally, then the local binary folder. And then in your main Bicep, similar to the DevOps one, you can create resources like text record. You can give it a name, your domain name, your zone ID, and the content value. Also comments, which Cloudflare allow, which is quite nice for if you want to put, say, an incident number or a change number, things like that. For authentication, Cloudflare has API tokens, and you can scope those down as well, which is quite nice. So for this, I've just got a API token scope to DNS creation essentially, so that I can do that. So in my main Bicep param here, I specify my local scope and my extension for Cloudflare, and I've put my own domain, my personal domain here, which is also in the Bicep param, but just here to illustrate that's what that would be. And then in Cloudflare, they have zone IDs, which you can find in your dashboard, I believe. In the overview, there's a zone ID, like a GUID, that you want to grab, so you'll need that as well. And then I've just put in some test values for a lot of the records here, just to illustrate, with a comment for the Bicep community call, so we can see that in action as well. So to authenticate for this, at the moment at least, you set a global variable, essentially. So if you was running it in a pipeline, you would have like a library variable, or GitHub repo secret, so that the pipeline could see that. And then when you do the Bicep local deploy, it's going to run the main Bicep param, just like the ADO one. And then my main Bicep here, I've got my zone ID, my domain name, and an example value here for the comments, for the text record at least. So let me just run that and show you guys what that looks like. Unfortunately, I've not got, John, I've not got your fancy output yet, so mine's a bit more robust, shall we say, or rudimentary. So yeah, super quick. You can see all the outputs here. The resources were successful. And if I share my browser quickly. Hopefully you can see that. So if I search, say, Bicep now, we should see we've got all these records that have been created. So the A record, the quadruple A, CNAME, MX text record. And we can see the content of the text record was there, hello Bicep. And if I go into one of the records, we should have all the comments for Bicep community call, which is really cool. So at the moment, I guess the main thing for me is that there's obviously not really the concept of state. So it's kind of a point and shoot at the moment. If you try to create it again, it's going to fail. I've not really figured those bits out, but as I say, I'll link in the comments. And if you want to get involved, just start contributing to that repository. And yeah, especially if you use Cloudflare, like get involved on that and contribute and see what we can do there. I think that'd be really cool. I know a lot of people use it. and I personally use it personally and in enterprise. So I think it's got a lot of power there. So yeah, that was just a quick win-stop tour of the CloudFlare extension I've put together. Anyone got any questions? No, cool. All right, I'll link it in the chat, and yeah, if you've got any questions, just find me on socials, drop me an email or something, or ping me in this chat, and I'll do my best to answer. And I think, Stephanie, am I going straight into the next one, right?
Yes, that'd be great.
So the next one I wanted to demo to everyone is a deployment stacks orchestrator. It's an idea I've had for a while. Can you see this okay as well?
Looks good to me.
Look good. Yeah, cool. Thanks. So I was at a user group not too long ago, and someone was demoing TerraGrunt and deploying Terraform, production grade Terraform at scale, and they were showing TerraGrunt, and it kind of inspired me to think, well, we don't really have anything like that in the Bicep world. So I wanted to go away and see what was possible there. I think the main thing I was looking to do, and I'm still refining it, it's not, you know, it's not feature complete at all. It's more of a conceptual proof of concept to show the art of the possible, I suppose, and where I personally think Bicep would be really cool to move to next for maturity and capability is when you deploy templates today. If you want to deploy template B on A, you have to do your own scripting logic outside of that. You have to do your PowerShell logic to say I've got to deploy A first, then B. If you want to depend within the template, that's fine. You can do depends on, implicit or explicit depends on. But if you want to make sure that my app over here in this landing zone depends on this other thing over here being deployed, like an API service or whatever, there's nothing really there at the moment. So I wanted to take that with the kind of the TerraGrunt foundations to see what would be possible here. So that the gist of the structure, at least for the proof of concept, is I've got an app, and because of deployment stacks, I personally like splitting out deployments now into what's kind of called like micro deployments. So rather than, perhaps typically not everyone would do this, but as part of CAF, you kind of always deploy a new landing zone for a new app. And then I see a lot of organizations do, huge template, monolith template, and then a huge monolith resource group on top of that. And that can be a little bit, it just feels a little bit off. So with the introduction of stacks, it kind of felt more natural to split those components out a little bit more. And the benefit of that is, team over here who does networking only needs to touch the landing zone app networking stack and monitoring and, so forth, SQL and all that stuff. So by splitting them out, we can circumvent the 4 meg ARM limit, but we can also deploy in parallel. The templates are much easier to manage, and the stacks are pretty fast to deploy as well. But then how that ties into an orchestration tool is, well, what if I want to depend my app on another stack completely, complete different stack, complete different app in a different landing zone, or, I just want to make sure that deploys in the sequential order that I want it to. But additionally, being able to deploy in parallel, which I think is a really cool concept, because at the minute, sure, you could do some PowerShell scripts and other things to deploy in parallel. But if you want to, say, deploy, 3 landing zones at once and both in multiple regions, wouldn't it be quite cool to deploy them all in parallel, but then they deploy in their dependent order? Not only is that pretty fast, but it just seems like a more mature approach to deploying at larger scale. So in my head, at least, what I've come up with is similar to TerraGrunt. They have the concept of metadata files. So I've got YAML metadata files here, and I've got my app. And in here, I'm specifying the stack name, is it subscription level, stack deployment, the location, and then the main apps file and param file, and what this app depends on, at least in this low down context. So it depends on the monitoring and the networking stacks. But also I've got a UK South and a UK West bicep param. So I want to deploy this in UK South and UK West. But I also want to deploy them in parallel whilst maintaining the sequency. But I also now need it to deploy front door because I want the host, the FQDN of the host origin groups to have those two apps, for a load balancing failover, that sort of thing. So in order to do that in a shared front door bicep file, I can specify under a global mechanism in the environment a dependency map for that. So my front door depends on my UK South app, but also my UK West app. And I've got a concept of environments here where the main goal of that is to point the orchestrator at an environment and it can figure out the dependency map itself. So just to illustrate that, if I was to point the orchestrator at the production environment, I can specify a specific stack with the dry run command to just see, well, what does my my main app depend on? Well, it depends on the network and monitoring. We already kind of know that. But what if I want to do the whole environment of prod? At the minute, there's not much in there. I've just got one app with in 2 regions and a front door. But when I run that now, we should be able to see. So these are all the root stacks: UK West, UK South, UK West ones. Here's sort of the stack, the main stack. So I've got a web app. For example, in these, they've got a web app, SQL, networking, monitoring, action groups, all those sort of things. So that, it depends on all this. And then lastly, the front door depends on these two being deployed first because it needs to know what the FQDN is going to be. And so the orchestrator will then be able to illustrate, well, this is the order I'm going to execute in. And so if I was going to execute without parallelism, it will just deploy one by one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But why not deploy, say, 7 at once if I wanted to, but it know that I need to deploy these in parallel and depending on their order. So if I run through an actual deployment, I won't let it go all the way because it takes too long, but just to kind of illustrate the point, if I take off dry run and run, you can see it sort of does the dry run show out again, and then it starts deploying. You can see straight away it's picked up that these are the base stacks that it's going to deploy. And if I stop sharing, show the portal just quickly. Portal. Yeah, if I go here, give it a no. You can see it's now deploying in parallel all of these, and it's doing them first before it needs to do the UK South and UK West app, and then it would finally do the front door. And I just think that's a cool concept because when we talk about even DR, just being able to point and shoot quickly and deploy all your apps, fast in parallel, and depending on different apps outside of those templates, i.e. different stacks, and I think that's a really cool trajectory. And I also just really like the concept around splitting up these deployments because of the granular RBAC that you get from splitting them out into different resource groups. The 4 meg ARM limit that you can get around, the isolation. And the cool thing about these stacks is that for those who don't know, we can output values into the stack metadata. And then by doing that, we can, if I go back to my VS Code, if I look at one of the main files, you'll see. So, in the main file, I'm pulling in the existing monitoring stack, and I'm able to pull out the strings from previous stacks. So the idea is that the upstream stacks output critical values that the next stacks need to then consume as part of that chain. So that if you let's say a networking team updated a networking stack, the dependent stacks downstream will automatically pick up the new output when they deploy, which is quite a nice feature with the stacks system as well, which I really like. So now you can see it's deploying the UK West and South app. And then I'll leave it there because it goes on too long because front door takes forever. And I don't know if front door's fixed yet, so I don't want to risk that. But yeah, that's kind of the orchestrator that I've put together. I just thought it was quite a cool concept, proof of concept at least. I haven't got a public repo yet, but I'll chuck something up and lob it on LinkedIn if anyone wants to check that out. And yeah, maybe just come together and get some new ideas on the way we can deploy with stacks, which I think would be really cool. So yeah, that's it. Any questions on that one?
Thank you so much, Dan.
Awesome. Thanks.
Let's see. Let's wait if there's any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. But yeah, we could probably move on then. If there's any questions later that pop up, we can answer them here. Thank you so much, Dan. And thank you, John, for the demo as well. Really great demos, really, really great efforts. We really appreciate all the work you guys are doing. All right, that should be it for topics. We have requested updates from the GitHub issue. I'll go through them one by one. We don't have any big updates, unfortunately, but I will mention each one. So for the first one, the Azure built-in roles, Marston gave a quick update in the GitHub issue. We've made some progress internally with the built-in function to convert from role name to ID. One of the several PRs for the backend was merged. We're working on the other PRs. We're expecting this to be completed this year, as long as we don't get impacted by any end-of-year deployment lockdowns, which may happen, especially after what you guys may have seen recently. There might be some code lockdown. So we're trying our best to get it out as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we don't always have full ability to know if we're able to do that and if there will be lockdowns or not. For the second one, the different experience pressing F12 and Bicep param files. Thank you for bringing this up, Stan and John. We are working on this soon. Thank you for reminding us about this. We had it in our list to do, but it had been deprioritized. But we will prioritize it, and Sheng will be working on it. He said he'll try to get it done by the end of next week. Wait and retry is still churning. We'll give you a more extensive update next call, but we don't have any big updates on this, unfortunately. But it did look like some people were asking, can you give more frequent updates? And we will hear you. We'll try to do that for the upcoming calls. For the feature request, reusable parameter definitions across Bicep templates, it looks like there's been a lot of people wanting this, which is really great. We're going to look into it a little bit. I think there's a little bit of discussion that needs to be had on how we want to implement this. But it seems like since so many people want it, we love to see the enthusiasm. We'll look into it a little bit closer this coming week. And the last one, the read environment variable without a default value causes non-configurable linter error. Yeah, we saw that this has been open for a little bit. Thank you for bringing it up again. Sometimes these issues do get deprioritized, and we need to be reminded on what to be working on. So I think we're going to try to bring out a quick fix for this, if that's possible at all, of just turning it into a linter warning. But I think we'll look deeper into how we can have a bigger fix in the future. Cool. Those are all of the requested updates. There's one short thing before we could go straight into questions. Microsoft Ignite. So I'm not sure if Angel, there's anything you want to talk about with Microsoft Ignite.
We're going to be at Ignite in person. So folks that are there, please swing by the booth. I'm going to see if I can force a Clippy meme generation competition. And we can all have a bunch of fun with that. But we'll have all the folks for Bicep, ARM, policy, and many of our other services. So please swing by, say hi, and any and all questions, doesn't matter if they're advanced or beginner, we'll be there to serve everyone and help and do our best to answer all of them.
Cool. Thanks,
Thanks.
Angel. Yeah, if you guys are showing up to Ignite, let us know in chat and maybe we could plan something. But thank you for all the support and excited to see you there if you will be there. We have this default slide. We have our social media, so we can kind of skip through that because we show it every time. And we can go straight into Q&A if anyone has any questions.
I have a quick one. It's only a minor one, but when will all of these type warnings that we get in Bicep files disappear? That mean we keep on having to put in, I can't remember now. I'm trying to find one of my Bicep files that has the stanza in to ignore. Yeah, the disabled BCP 081. I'd love to not to have to keep putting that in to get rid of all the warnings every time I change API versions.
I can't say that we have an answer for you right now, unfortunately. I do see, Anthony, you unmuted if you have an answer.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think we have a plan for how to do this, but it hasn't been something we've prioritized recently. Currently, basically, Azure types are bundled with the version of Bicep you have installed. So, in general, if we should be no more than like a month update. So if you upgrade your Bicep version, that should get you the latest version of the types. But there's obviously a delta between that and new types being available. I can share the issue for the fix for that, and feel free to upvote it. So that's probably a good way of like us prioritizing the work.
Cool. Thanks for the answer, Anthony. There's another question. Will we ever get token support for ACR? I think the best person to answer that would be Marcin, but I don't believe he is here today. I would either create an issue or create a discussion, and maybe we could see if he can give an answer there, but no guarantees here.
I can give a little more information on that one.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
We do have an issue already for this one. I think it's this issue. Just put it in the chat. This is basically about supporting token auth for ACR, I think. There was a team internally who were kind of interested in working on this, and so we've been kind of sharing the details of like, here's how you could contribute it to Bicep. I haven't heard anything back recently, but they seemed pretty interested in contributing this. So I think we can follow up with them and probably get an update for you in the next community call. Yeah, Richard, that's correct. We were waiting on the ORS project to publish a .NET SDK, but they have now done that. So we should be on block for getting that work done.
James, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm interested in maybe doing some more work on the extensions that y'all shared. My only concern is that something that we're for sure invested in? Like if it's a breaking change, that's fine. Like I don't mind changing APIs and things, but if it's something that might get like benched, then I don't want to run out and do a whole bunch of work on it and find out. Going back, is that something we're definitely set on moving forward? So I can reasonably, I know there's always a little bit of uncertainty in that, but feels like something I could start investing in that probably still be around in a year from now.
So yeah, we've had both inside Microsoft and outside of Microsoft, we've had asks for this to be available in a GA capability. So we have made the commitment that local deploy is something we're going to be supporting in a GA capacity. But to your first point, like there's definitely a good chance that some of the like specifics are going to change.
Okay, I can live with that. That's fine. Cool, thanks.
Thanks. And there's a question about Extendable parameters being an experimental. We've been doing some research into this, and there's just a little bit more of investigation and more planning that we have to do to have it fully released in GA. We originally were thinking of getting it done earlier this year, but then we realized there are more bugs and more feature asks that we realized we want to get it as close to the perfect experience as we can before we release it to GA, just in case for these breaking changes and these bugs. So unfortunately, no direct plan on that, but we are working towards getting it to GA in the next year. I see a question about any plans for only if not existent AVM modules. Jack Tracy gave a response here. He's in charge of AVM modules. He says to file an issue on the BRM repo and give some more context there if we can. Someone asked about stacks on track for the current ETA. Latest ETA is mid-December for PowerShell and CLI clients. .NET SDK is still planned for November. I don't see any other questions. About console, is it available with AZCLI? I think Anthony or Tate,
I think that's
if
a
you're still
question for
here.
Tate, if you're still there.
Yeah, I see Tate still here. Tate, do you have an answer about console being available with AZCLI?
I think it should be available through AZCLI, but I would need to confirm.
I think Azure CLI will take care of installing Bicep for you, but I think we would have to do some work to actually expose it through Azure CLI. So you'd probably need to call AZ install and then pull Bicep manually rather than going through Azure CLI.
And there is a question, I'm not sure if Anthony, you might have the answer for this, but is there a way for someone to copy modules from one ACR to another without redeploying?
I don't believe so. I think that I remember seeing an issue for that. I will try and dig up the issue.
Sounds good.
I mean, I'm assuming that you could probably do this with like the Auras client or some other registry client, but we don't have support for this in the Bicep CLI.
Hope that answers your question. Okay. I think that should be it from all the questions here. I think we answered all of them. No more hands up. All right. If that's it, then thank you, everyone. Thank you specifically, John and Dan, for the demos and Tate as well. We really appreciate all of you guys for showing up and giving feedback, and all of the comments in the chat have been really, really great to be able to see. We love the activity here. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you at the next Bicep Community Call.